Here I am, again, on the road long, long before the sun has come up. At this point, it's about 5:15 a.m., and we've already been driving for almost an hour and a half. At least this time, I don't have to do the driving. My friend Steve is driving because he has a much bigger pickup truck that is capable of hauling the 6 by 12 foot trailer that we rented for this job. What could possibly get me out of bed that early on a Saturday, you ask? What could possibly need a big truck and a trailer? Through another friend in the local area, Steve found out about a huge cache of Apple computers that was at risk of going to e-waste. After a couple of weeks of negotiation with the owner, we finally had a time to drive out and pick the stuff up. Problem is, the computers were in far eastern Washington, not too far from Spokane. I'm protecting the actual location of the pickup. For reference, Spokane is nearly a 6-hour drive from Portland, and it's even more than that when hauling a trailer. Faced with more than 12 hours of driving, we left Steve's house at 4 a.m. We had been sent about 100 pictures of the collection. We knew it had been stored in a large barn, and there was a lot of stuff. We really had no idea what to expect, and we were not prepared for the sheer magnitude of this collection. When we walked in, we were absolutely stunned by how much stuff there was. The barn had a small loft, so I panned around the area from up there. Now, this is no computer reset, but holy smokes! There is so much stuff. Just piles and piles of computers like I've never seen in a personal collection. This is the loft area. I'll come back to that in a moment. The rest of this is more stuff that couldn't be seen from my original vantage point. There's just so much. There were a bunch of items in the original round of pictures that the owner had wisely decided to keep, and I don't blame him. He had put all of that in the upper loft to make things easier for everyone, and you can kind of see a little bit of the goodies that are hiding up there. Throughout the day, as we dug through those piles, we kept finding more computers, especially Apple IIgs and Mac LC575 systems. I began to suspect that those things had been multiplying in there. As much Apple stuff as there is, the collection wasn't just Apple. There was a myriad of other things. Most of the super odd stuff was server components. Much of the collection came from education, government, and business surplus sales where items were often bought by the pallet. I think that's how there ended up being at least 50 Apple laser writers in the collection. One of the things I was most hoping to find in the collection was a Macintosh 840 AV. There was one that he was willing to let go, but when we opened it up, it was in a pretty sorry state. I ended up just taking the 68040 CPU off of it and letting the rest of it go off to the great computer graveyard in the sky. Unsurprisingly, we spent a long time loading this trailer. During this loading process, if you see anything that you are particularly interested in seeing a video about, let me know in the comments. A lot of these computers are going to other people, so I may not be able to get a specific item to do a video about, but a bunch of stuff did come back to my house. I am intending to do some videos. Let me know what your interests are. Anyway, it was a hot day. I think it got up to about 100 degrees out there. At least it was a dry heat. Unfortunately, inside that trailer, it was probably 120. It was so hot. We had to take turns, and we went through phases of gathering things up and kind of piling them up outside the trailer and then bring a bunch of stuff in and kind of try to Tetris it together in batches to make it go a little bit easier and faster and try to avoid heat stroke. Seems like a feature. Our goal in the loading was to try to have sort of a single uniform thickness layer of stuff across the whole area of the trailer, so that as we made turns and went up hills and so on and so forth, the load wouldn't shift around, that hopefully nothing would shift around. I think that we did a pretty good job. We managed to meet that goal. While there were a huge number of Apple IIe's in the collection, there were a few more uncommon Apple II computers. That computer there without a lid on it is an Apple II. Just a plain Apple II. In this next segment, I'm trying to talk to the guy about a footlocker of computer user group newsletters that his dad had collected and discs that went with them that were in this footlocker. Unfortunately, something went really wrong with the audio on this camera. I don't know what its deal was, so it's a little bit hard to hear, and I do apologize for that. So these are all the user group.
Yeah, and so we've got the actual
Wow.
copies from the user group back in the day. This one, how to weigh an elephant.
Really big scale.
Machine, too.
Really big scale. Wow. Oh man, there is.
And yeah, there were just boxes of Apple software and some PC stuff too.
Right. Wow. I love that it's in a footlocker. A lot of the hard drives in these systems may have contained personal information related to the business that the current owner's father had run. So one of his friends had the unenviable task of going through every system that we took and pulling out the hard drive. We got the job of pulling out all the hard drives out of all these machines that we're going to take with us.
I made the mistake of only bringing one screwdriver is what I did.
Oh yeah, and so what's your plan when the electric screwdriver runs out of battery?
I have 2 batteries.
Ah, so you've done this before, huh? Yeah. Excellent. Well, it'll be interesting. Oh, I wish we would have brought a scale to weigh how many hard drives are going to get pulled out of.
It's a lot, so.
It is going to be a lot. Holy smokes. By this point, even the sound of the Tetris music in my head was barely keeping me going. It was such a daunting task. And I think because of the exhaustion level that we were facing, we made a couple of mistakes. There were a couple things that we left behind that we should have taken with us. We have this huge stack of Apple IIgs computers, and we only grabbed a couple of the external 3.5-inch floppy drives to go with them. We had also set aside some monitors for the 2GSs. I think some of them were the nice RGB monitors for those, and we just forgot to load them. That was a mistake. There's probably a couple of the 575s that we could have grabbed. We were wise to not grab any more giant 21-inch monitors. I am super excited to play around with that Apple 2-page monitor, but there were a bunch of monitors that we were just so heavy and take up so much space. We were wise to leave those behind. After all that hard work, we began the long journey home. We put a bit of distance behind us, and we realized that it was well after 4 p.m., and we hadn't really eaten anything except the occasional protein bar all day. We decided to stop at a random non-chain restaurant in Colfax, Washington. And I highly recommend doing that when you travel. Don't go to a place you know. Go to a place that's local that you've never heard of before. If I'm ever in that area again, I will definitely return to Zip's Drive-In. We were expecting a lovely drive through eastern Washington wheat country, followed by a relaxing trip down the Columbia Gorge. The wheat had already been harvested, so it was a little more barren than it would have been just a few weeks ago, but it was still nice. I have to give credit to Washington for coming through with its part. Oregon and the Gorge, however, decided to be spicy. Once we hit the gorge, the rain and the famous gorge wind started in earnest. The wind was so strong, there were whitecaps on the Columbia River. Just listen to it howling out there. Since the trailer was loaded, the wind wasn't quite as dangerous as it would have been with a lighter, empty trailer, but it was still a little sketchy. What made things really spicy was the lightning. ID4 is divided in this stretch, and we came across a section where the divider was on fire due to a lightning strike. From that point on, I did my best to try to capture some of those lightning strikes on my camera. It is more difficult than it sounds.
Directly above us.
Here's a collection of some of them. I'll put a time code on the screen if you want to skip it.
Wow.
We got back to Portland around 11 p.m., unloaded the wet monitors from the back of the pickup and most of the trailer. Unsurprisingly, for me, some of the best things in the find were the Mammoth servers. And there were some terrific machines in there. This HP Net Server 5/100, I believe, is a Pentium Pro. The CPU is on a riser card. Sometimes they are single processor, sometimes they are dual processor. I have not opened it yet, so that is a big mystery. This machine proclaims that it is a dual Pentium 2 133, and it is a beast. It is super heavy and has wheels. Kind of hiding over on the side, way over there, that I don't know if is visible on the camera. Over here is a Xserve G4 that has apparently had the CPU removed, so it may need some help. But the twin sister bells of the ball are these Apple Network Server 700s. These are, have to wait for traffic. These Apple Network Server 700s have PowerPC 604 CPUs, and they do not run macOS. They run AIX. And there's 2 of them. Have to wait for traffic. My hope is that I can cobble together one really good working system out of this. They are so huge, I suspect I will not be able to keep either one for very long. My current plan is for these to come back in Unixtober, so hopefully we'll be seeing these again in October so that I can try to get AIX on them and get them running and then get them out of my house, because they're huge and they are super heavy. But for me, these 5 machines were amongst the coolest things that came home.